European the European Authority for, providing statistics around the Eurozone on different issues for all the member states. So this database shows different housing and social indexes that help us give the context of the Greek crisis to our readers when it comes to how the crisis has impacted households in Greece. So up until now, we have spine and context of data in a story. And third, we have the guide. I'm very happy about what you see on the right side of the screen as well. It's a project that we have been working on with CCIJ, especially with my closest colleague, Yushi Wang, the data fellow of CCIJ. And it is a project that tries to pinpoint locations and communities when it comes to getting information about water-related articles online, focused on South Africa as a beginning, as starters, and of course we would like to expand to other countries in Africa. And I know that many people from Africa have been reporting on water-related issues, and from my limited experience working on that issue and with these communities, I can say that finding relevant and comparable information and data on water is very, very, very difficult in Africa. So what we would like to do with this project is that since there is no available data, we would like to create our own data set. And this is a good path for our next topic in this session, which means that we scraped, we downloaded actually from GDELT. GDELT is a project by Google that monitors all online media of the world for news and different communities, different events. And what we did was to acquire information about water-related articles from 2017 up until 2022 and create this database, a structured database with water-related articles, so that we can find interesting locations, interesting communities, hotspots of, different rainfall levels or droughts or all these water-related issues. And that way we were able to help our reporters that are working on the ground in Africa to send them there to this specific community, provide with context of what is happening, what has been reported on those issues, and, save so much time and so many resources. So up until now, we have discussed how data can be a spine for our story, meaning a story that cannot be told without the use of data, how data could provide context, meaning that this story could be possible without the use of data, but at the same time, data gives this advantage of providing the real context of a topic or a place. And now we just discussed guides so that data can help us pinpoint locations and people and send our reporters, our photographers to these communities, to these locations to do on-the-ground reporting. So what comes beyond a spreadsheet? Data and cross-border investigations are supposed to be a perfect match and to empower independent journalistic collaborations, of course. But this is not always the case because, for example, as we discussed before, if you want to compare data from different countries into, let's say, the city level, let's say that you want to investigate rising rents in your area, in your state, in different cities of your country or in different countries. What we have done in the past and what we have encountered is that there is a great lack of available data from country to country. Many times when we were discussing and when we were asking public administrators for data, they didn't really know what kind of data they have, or if they had it, it would be in a very, very poor format. So many times we also had to deal with different methodologies of, getting and discussing the data, meaning that if you want to analyze rising rents or rents in general in Athens, there is no data. And then you have to scrape it. At the same time, when you want to analyze rental data in Berlin, for example, in Berlin, they include electricity and water bills in the rent. So you see how these two different rental prices are not comparable. And again, people do not really know what data they have. And when I'm saying people, I mean public administrations. But there are some good news, and data journalism does not need to be solely based on existing data sets. In fact, there is a great case for making your own data. And again, the key to successfully building a data set for your story is to querying every source of data with a journalistic sense of curiosity. This might sound very straightforward, but I don't want to overestimate our powers when it comes to saying that, okay, there is no data available, let's create our own. The truth is that solid and thorough data projects can be very, very complex and time-consuming. But at the same time, you don't really need to be proficient in Python or R or any of all those different programming languages in order to start analyzing some data. And now we are going to see how building your own data set could benefit your work and how to start doing it, because the reward is very, very big. So first things first, you can see that we are starting from zero, because in coding, we always start in counting from zero. First of all, you have to plan what is required. The first step to making or gathering data for your analysis is assessing what is required and if it can be obtained. At the outset of any project, it's worth making a story memo which sketches out what you expect the story will attempt to tell, where you think the data is, how long it will take to find it, and where the potential pitfalls are. You see, this methodology deals again with, the pillars of asking questions in journalism with what, where, how, and who. This memo will help you assess how long the work will take and if the outcomes is worth the effort. It can also serve as something to come back to when you are in the midst of the work at a later stage. Always try to keep a memo of what you are doing, and we will see why this is so important in the following slides, because it makes your life so much easier and your work replicable, which is one of the pillars of data journalism today, like getting your project as transparent as possible so that other people can replicate your methodology and apply it to their local context or topic they want to investigate. Second step is think of the top line. We are still in the stage of thinking and organizing and planning our data investigation. Okay, so we are not even close to getting the data. And at this point, at the outset of the data-driven story that you want to run, where the data does not exist, you should ask what the top line of the story is, what you want to really say with this kind of data. It's essential to know what the data should contain, as this will set the parameter for what questions you can ask of the data. It is essential, as the data will only ever answer questions based on what it contains. If we go back to what we discussed, it is again about structure. think specifically of all the rows and, more importantly, all the columns of your data set, because this is where you will ask your questions. Limited length and width of your data means limited questions that you can ask your source, here your data. So therefore, to make the data set that will fill your needs, be very clear about what you want to be able to explore and what information you need to explore it. There are so many different, variables when it comes to data. So you should start thinking of that even before trying to get the data. Write down with pen and paper what you want to do and how you are going to achieve it. Number 3, where might the data be held? Very, very, very important. The next step here is to think through where the data may be held in any shape or any form. One way to do this is to retrace your step. Again, go back to your memo and see how you have started talking, thinking, and sketching this data. How do you know there is a potential story here? Where did the idea come from? And is there a potential data source behind it? Of course, you start with an idea when it comes to any story, not a data-driven story. So you start with an idea, and maybe sometimes you start with a hypothesis. And here is the point that you need to ask yourself: why is this important, and where is the data to start, responding to these questions? Your research will also help you clarify what exists. So you can go through all of the sources of information that refer to the issue of interest and talk to academics, talk to reporters, talk to researchers and statisticians that have worked with this kind of data in the past. We are not the first ones to work with data. We will not be the last ones. We are not going to reinvent the wheel. So some people, some good people, have been through all these obstacles that we are now facing when it comes to acquiring the data and building our own data set. So don't hesitate to pick up the phone to ask for the data. Don't hesitate to send that email and ask them to share your data, because most of the time you will be surprised of the responses. People really want to help when it comes to people that have been researching before. I'm not talking about public administrations or private companies that want to conceal what we want to reveal. So come together with other people, ask questions to them, try to collaborate, and of course, ask for the data, because this will help you identify shortcomings and possible pitfalls using the data. It should also spark some ideas about other sources and ways of getting the data. All of this preparation, still, we are in the preparation stage before you start building your own data, is very, very valuable, of course. And if you need to work with difficult government agencies or decide to take another approach to gathering the data, you cannot decide to go a specific way without before that, thinking, discussing with others about how they have done it. We are not alone in this, and you are not alone. And CCIJ specifically is here to help with any data stories that you might think and you feel intimidated of the data or of the methodologies, or how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to scrape that website if I don't know how to write a Python script or anything. People have been doing that for a good amount of time. So again, please get in touch. Let's discuss what you have been up to, and maybe we or someone else in our network will be able to help you with this data exercise or data story that you want to do. Moving on to the next one, ethical concerns when it comes to getting the data as well as analyzing the data. Do not torture the data, right? Do not torture the data so that they get to say something that is not a fair reflection of reality. This goes back to our hypothesis, our initial point that we want to prove, our initial, thirst of confronting companies, confronting people, confronting governments. Of course, this is very powerful, and this is how, maybe this is why we do like this job, but at the same time, we have to be very fair with the data. So in planning and sourcing any story, we need to weigh up the ethical concerns, and working with data is no different. It's just the same. The same as you interviewing a human source, it's the same here with interviewing a data non-human source. So when building a data set, we need to consider if the source and methods we are using to collect the information is the most accurate and most complete one. Of course, simplicity is key, but at the same time, we should be very, very careful when it comes to accurate and complete methodologies. And we will talk about methodology. I'm a big fan of methodology notes and, publishing your methodology together with your story, not in the same, of course, article, not at all, because what is more important is the story. The data and the methodology is not that important. This is also the case with the analysis. While examining the information from multiple angles, and do not torture the data again. That's so important. In presenting the story, be prepared to be transparent about sourcing, analyzing, and limitations of the data. It is very, very important to have a very nice data set and to have a very, very solid methodology and to manage, to confront this company and reveal a big, financial or any other scandal. But at the same time, we must also start discussing about failures and about what our data cannot do. Of course, we will start with what our data can do, but it's equally important discussing when it comes to, publishing your how-to, your methodology to other people, to other colleagues. It's very important to let them know what they cannot really do with this data. Make your data set as open and as accessible as possible so that people can get the information they want just from reading the README, tab of the data set. Talk specifically about what each column is about. Talk about the time frame that the data set covers. All these are very, very important considerations, and maybe sometimes it sounds like boring, like I don't want to publish like all these different details because here's my story, here's how I managed to confront this company and to reveal what they have been doing. But at the same time, if we want to be open, and because data journalism is about openness and transparency, we should do the same as practitioners of data journalism, right? And as you know, as people working with data know, there are so many resources out there, and they are open and accessible to everyone. So let's consider giving back to the community through our data and through our open data sets and methodologies. Next point is how to get the data, and please be very, very kind to yourself. Once a potential source has been identified, the next step is always to get the data. So, and again, many different ways of getting the data, which are going to discuss now. This may be done manually through data entry into a spreadsheet. I wouldn't recommend that. When we do stuff manually, it means that it's like 100% certain that we are going to type something wrong, or even, copy and paste some information into the wrong cell in our spreadsheet. Getting the data also means transforming information logged in PDFs into structured data that you can analyze. When it comes to PDFs, that's a very, very, common issue that people face when trying to get data out of them. If we are lucky with PDFs, they are not scanned PDFs, which means that we can, OCR them, meaning that we can select actually some text or numbers on the PDF and, extract it to our spreadsheet with different tools. We can discuss PDF specifically in another session, or just get in touch with me, because I've been having a very, very hard time trying to get information out of PDFs, and I think we have come up with some good methodologies in this at this point, and I'm very, very happy to share any kind of information and tools and resources specifically on scraping information from PDFs and from the web. Of course, what is another very, very important and powerful tool is Freedom of Information Acts. Feel free to share your experiences with FOIs, because we have had a very, very difficult time in Greece trying to make it work. I know that other European states have been very successful in that, and I know that FOI are very, very strong in the States as well. So people from Africa, share your experiences with us on how this has worked for you in the past. And of course, another way of acquiring information is actually directly talking to the websites that you want to scrape through APIs, which are the application programming interfaces. It's a way of humans and non-humans interacting. What is very important here, again, is being kind to ourselves. Working with data is not simple all of the time, which means that we should aim for the simplest way of getting the data. We have said that before, we are saying this again. Try to not hesitate to pick up the phone or to send an email to other potential sources or people that have been working with the same data. Seek to find the most straightforward way of getting the information into a data set that you can analyze. If possible, also make your work process replicable, because this will help you to check your work and add to the data set at a later stage. It depends on the duration of the project. Sometimes we have to deal with data that has happened in the past, right? Meaning that we will not need to update the data prior to our story, prior to publishing our story. At the same time, there are other projects and other stories that require us to keep scraping or getting the data in parallel while working on the story, maybe sometimes even hours before or a couple of days before the actual publication of the story. So please try to make your whole process as clear as possible, first of all, for you, right? So that if you started getting this information 2 months ago and you need to get the same information after 5 months, you know how to do it and you just replicate your process. You are not starting from scratch again. In updating the data, refer back to your story outline and ask, will the data allow me to fully explore the topic? Is always, again, going back to your master document, to the memo, to the sketch that you have created in the first stage of your investigation. Always go back to that master file, try to stay consistent at that, try to be fair to yourself and to what you have started already working on, and don't try to make dramatic changes, because this means that you will have to go again back in time and start from scratch. So next point, point number 6, here number 5 on your screen, structure and repetition. I would add imitation in repetition. Imitation and repetition are, in my opinion, the two major driving forces of journalism, but I don't know, of life in general. So the key difference between information contained in a stack of text-based paper documents and data and data set is structure. Structure is everything. It's structure and archiving, like being able to go back to your documents at any time and that you might need to. Not only about data, but hard copies. Try to have your desk tidy, because this is how you are going to be more resourceful, and also spend less time in making this work. Structure and repetition are essential to building a clean data set that is ready for analysis. Of course, you cannot analyze a dirty data set. You need to go through some initial cleaning, try to make everything look the same when it comes to the same people or the same entities, and then you will be able to go to the analysis. Don't start analyzing before running some initial queries to your data, because these queries will reveal all the shortcomings of the data, all the potholes, and how dirty the data is, which means that after doing this exercise, this querying exercise, you will have ready for you the time that you will need to spend in order to clean the data. So the first step is to familiarize with the information. Ask yourself what the material contains and what they will allow you to say. What won't you be able to say, again, is equally important. Is there any other data set that you might want to combine the information with? If you are able to find two different data sets talking about more or less the same topic, the same issue, and you are able to find this common identifier in the data set, that it will allow you to combine them into one. It cannot be only two. Maybe you have 3, 4, 5 different data sets that contain at least one key shared common identifier that you can use in order to bring everything together into one single data set. That's a huge success if you manage to do it. Make sure that the data you collect will compare oranges with oranges, right? Don't try to compare oranges with apples or bananas, because this will not happen. And last point, finally, for you, hope you are still with us. Keep track of your work. Keep track of your work and assume nothing. Keep notes of the sources you have used to create your data, and always keep a copy of the original documents and datasets. When you need to clean a column in your dataset, please do not edit, do not clean this column directly. What you need to do is to create a copy, duplicate this column, and start working on the new column, so that you have both the original version of your data as well as the edited one, so that you can compare. And always, if you are going to publish your data set and make it accessible to other people, always publish both versions. Write up a methodology and keep a data dictionary, so that you can show your sources and how the data has been processed and what each column contains. This will help you flag questions and seek out any potential errors as you gather and start analyzing the data. Again, assume nothing and check all your findings with further reporting. Don't just, rely on data. Data is a very nice tool. It's not the end point. Data is a very nice tool for fact-checking, but the best tool when it comes to fact-checking is your logic, really. And sometimes even common sense, meaning that you should spend some time with the data, you should spend more time with yourself and with your team and with the reporters on the ground, with your human sources, because this is where the real information and, this is what journalism is about. It's not like data, of course, is a tool. It's a tool that I hope you love as much as I do, but it cannot compare it. It will never, substitute real human sources. It can unlock different questions. It can unlock different levels of reporting and of publishing the data. We haven't really talked about visualizations, and we are not going to talk about visualizations in this session, but visual storytelling with data and with images are very, very important as well. And spending time with your sources on the ground is equally important as spending time with your computer and dataset. Thank you. I'll stop here. I just stop sharing my screen. Hope you are still with us. And please let me know if there are any questions.
Thank you, Sotiris, and thank you, everybody, for participating. Any questions so far? We got a comment, a shout out to you, Sotiris. Thank you, Sotiris. Great information. I appreciate if you can elaborate more on the FOI process. Let's start there.
I wish I could elaborate more on the FOI process because there are some colleagues here from Greece that we have been trying to do this together. If you guys feel that you want to jump in and comment on that, please feel free. I'll start and you can interrupt me. Freedom of information is this process that, according to a law, the public entity that you are asking information from is obliged to give you the information that you are asking for. And again, this is according to law. I can talk about European law and I can talk about Greek law. And the Greek law is very, very strict compared to the European one. But guess what? There have been only a few instances of successful FOI requests in Greece. Of course, people have been requesting. I'm talking about successful responses, even getting a reply that, no, we are not going to give you the data that you have requested, maybe because we don't have it, is a success here. But I know that other people and other journalists in other countries have been very, very successful with getting information from public institutions using this tool. And some of the greatest journalism projects have been done thanks to information acquired through FOIs. If people have experience with this tool, please turn on your mics and let us know, because I'm very interested myself. Again, FOI is a way of getting information together with parsing information manually or in an automatic way, or scraping websites is another tool. And I'd love to hear people having successful examples of FOIs.
Yeah, so if anybody actually has a story or some ideas, certainly this is an invitation to take yourself off mute and tell us. We can have this as a conversation.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't have any experiences with FOIs, feel free to ask any other questions or talk about your work, how you have been working with data, anything.
Uh, Again, questions in the chat, or you could take yourself off mute to ask your question. Sotiris, just as a general observation, or I'd like to hear your observation. You brought up those 6 points. Those really, and each one of them are very critical. As a data journalist, of those 6, which ones do you see the least amount of attention paid to by non-data journalists that you really want to say, you got to really think about this? Like, where are the pitfalls that you're seeing that non-data journalists do?
Yeah, the first one, I think the most obvious one, it's a technical one, and it comes to structure. I think structure is very, very important when it comes to being able to analyze the data. So, because when we are talking about structure, we are actually talking about cleaning the data, and cleaning the data is one of the worst processes in working with data. So that's why many people will try to avoid cleaning the data. But if they do that, they will end up with false and fake results. So first, when it comes to technical observations, structure is critical. And I would say structure in everything. Structure in general is very critical, not only about data, not only about journalism. Like, I don't know, like I know that people listening to music here, or people reading poetry, I'm sure that they understand what I'm talking about, how important structure is. So first one, structure. Let me go back to very, very important. Keep track of your work. Keep track of your work is very, very important, because myself, like, I can start writing some code today, and the code works, and I wake up the day after and I'm trying to understand what I have written. Which, yeah, it's very frustrating sometimes. So try to use, comments to yourself. This is what I did on Wednesday, 26th of October, when it comes to writing code. And then you will go back to that note 1 month later, and you will be able to understand much easier and much faster what you have been doing a month ago.
Okay, thank you, Sotiris. Yeah. George posted a question. I'll read it out loud. And George, if you want to, you feel free to elaborate. Excellent and insightful. Thank you, Sotiris. Question: living in South Africa and trying to get data on the continent has been an uphill task. You mentioned GDELT, is that right? For water data on the continent. I am aware of code for Africa. Are there any other large go-to sources for raw data, especially any related to Africa?
Yeah. Thanks for that, George. I can see you have a Greek name living in South Africa. I will be visiting South Africa and Johannesburg for the African Investigative Journalism Conference next week. If you are there, please text me so that we can talk in person as well. When it comes to other sources, perfect, amazing. When it comes to other sources, please search for OpenUp. I'm sure that you already know them, maybe. OpenUp, we have been working very closely with them, both for the development of the water data repo, which is the project on GDELT that we have built. It's not ready yet, but I will present that project in the IJC, so it will be ready by then, and I will share the link. And OpenUp have also been working on the Water WASI, which is a very, very useful tool to find information about how clean the water is in specific regions in South Africa. And they really gather information, historical data, from different sources, and they combine it into a structure, map, and data set. Thanks, Esther, for sharing the link. WASMAP is a great tool when it comes to water access to drinking water and quality of water in South Africa. When it comes to the whole continent, I cannot really share more resources because I don't really know them. But again, our vision is to expand our water data repo to other countries in the continent. And hopefully this will happen soon.
We have one more question, but before I do so, I just want to remind people, or let people know rather, that at the conclusion of this presentation, which will be in a couple of minutes, you will be directed straight to an evaluation. It's very, very brief. And when we talk about data, that's a very important set of data for us to know that we are doing right by you. So please take 2 minutes just to fill that out. You will be receiving this slide deck. Thank you, Sotiris, for that. And let me go ahead and following this presentation by email, let me ask the following question, which is in chat. Miriam has posted, how do you manage cross-border team data work in terms of partner journalist selection, arrangements, data collection? Maybe you can share just a few tips about this as well.
Oh, yes. Great point. Very, very important one. There are so many different ways to start a cross-border investigation. Personally, I have been working with journalists for some years now, meaning that, you have a closer relationship with them, not only professional one, but you just discuss with people. You discuss with people about different things that are happening in our cities. And that's how we started this cross-border investigation into housing in 17 different European cities. Of course, the topic needs to be important and relevant to everyone. Getting the right team doesn't always mean that the team should contain only data people, right? We are talking about not only cross-border, but also cross-discipline, interdisciplinary projects. So yes, you should work with reporters on the ground. You should talk with lawyers. We should talk with activists, with academics, with everyone. What is very, very important when it comes to making the team work is getting rid of, journalism egos, because in a cross-border team, you will have to deal with and work with people from different journalism backgrounds, people from different journalism languages, not to mention real languages when it comes to Europe or other countries in Africa. Collaboration is, again, innovation. Being able to get the word we on the front and the word I, send it to the background, is a very, very important step when it comes to making this cross-border investigation a success. And when it comes to getting comparable data, it's, I think, the most difficult, one of the most difficult parts of a cross-border investigation, because different countries stock different data and in very, very different ways. That in practice means that Norway and all the countries in the north of Europe they are very, very open, and they have very, very detailed information accessible to everyone. At the same time, countries at the south in the south of Europe are very, very, not willing to share their data, even if they have it. Trust me, most of the time they don't have it, which means that in order to make it work for the group project and in order to reach your common goal, some people are here and other people are here. And you cannot ask these people here to go down. You just need to run in order to catch them and try to publish something that is relevant for them as well. And that's how, and that's when the building your own data set practice comes into the equation. And that's when you start to scrape websites and you start to talk with other people so that they can provide you with data. Sometimes this will not be the case either, meaning that there are instances that you might need to say that you cannot be part of this team because you cannot provide anything. And this is a failure, but it's a good failure because we should be able to discuss about them as well. Again, what we did well and what didn't work out very well eventually. There is a specific point that you need to tell to yourself that you need to quit. You need to quit, from looking for information in this data set. It's again, we are again going back to the hypothesis and how fair you should be both to yourself and to the data. You cannot exploit the data to tell the story that you want it to say. The data tells their own story.
Thank you for that, Sotiris. And as you see in the chat, his contact information is there. So if there is additional questions you have, please use that. He will also be at the AIJC conference next week. So look for him. And with that, we are at the top of the hour, past a few minutes. Thank you for those who stuck around. On behalf of CCIJ, thank you, Sotiris. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We'll see you again in the year 2023, if you could believe it. All right. Be well, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.